Welcome, SkyMagic makers. Welcome, 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 and welcome to Mars. Today we are invoking the archetype, that part of our psyche, that part of our being that understands strength, decisiveness, and courage, and leadership, and willpower. That sexy, swashbuckling, sure of itself, noble, right action part of ourself. We're invoking a very primal, deep part of our being here, that first impulse, that urge into being. I have a book on spiritual astrology by someone named Per Gullfoss, and I'm just going to read you a little quote from that book. It says, "Oh, such a joy to have a will, such an adventure to explore the world of possibilities with this will, to feel the rush of blood and heat rolling through the veins, and to feel the joy of life and enthusiasm and force that can make you dance and sing and fight and express all that flows through your being." That's a really great description of Mars. It's the part of us that's sexy and strong and loves being alive, loves being in the physical world. It's that pure joy of being, of beginning, of starting something new. So some archetypal images of Mars are the pioneer and the adventurer and the warrior and the strong, brave, honest, and true hero. In astrology, Mars rules Aries, the first sign, the baby of the zodiac, Aries. We've just gone into Aries right now with the spring equinox. But Mars is also the ancient ruler of Scorpio. Before Pluto was discovered, Mars ruled Scorpio. And like Pluto, Mars has to do with power. And power is the ability to have an effect. It's the part of us that actually gets up and walks across the room and picks up something we want. It's a very simple, direct, almost primitive part of ourselves. It's the part of ourselves that needs to take action. And it's also like our inner policeman or our inner army. Mars needs to do something. And one of the things that Mars does best is protect. The astrological symbol for Mars is a circle sending out an arrow with the tip pointed up, which is also the symbol for maleness, male, and Mars is very male. It's the erect phallus and the sperm entering the egg and the yang energy of eros and desire. But whether we're male or female, we all have Mars. We all have the desire to penetrate life, to have an effect. We all have this intuitive, fiery, passionate part of ourselves that wants to protect our heart's deepest desire. We all have that will to be fully alive. In mythology, Mars is often spoken of as the god of war, which is easy to understand, strong and assertive and aggressive. But in ancient mythologies, Mars is also the god of agriculture. And when humans first took metal out of the earth and forged it into a plow and a scythe, we created a way to protect ourselves from famine. And the population really was able to increase once humans figured out some agriculture. So Mars is not about destruction or anger or violence. That's a dishonored Mars. Mars is the part of us that protects what needs to be protected, whether that's the species or the entire planet or our own personal intention. Mars makes it happen. It's our will. It's as natural and necessary as springtime is. So Mars isn't just about having our own way or dominating something. Although we've all had situations where someone is being aggressive towards us and we react with aggression. When the heat comes up in our body, anger can sometimes cloud our sight and we can react with violence. We can match the energy that's coming at us, but that's a dishonored Mars. When the heat of anger or fear or anxiety comes up in us, it is Mars activating in our system. But if Mars isn't acting to protect or to shield something real, that part of us can get very confused and come off as a pushy, selfish little brat or a domineering asshole. Any martial artist knows that if you resist the energy that's coming at you, you're lost. You need to engage that energy. You need to use it or step out of the way. The weakest position that we can possibly be in is trying to resist or be stronger than the energy that's coming at us. There's a saying in Buddhism, if you engage in battle, you've lost the battle. So Mars isn't so much about fighting as it is about protecting. When we feel that heat coming up in our bodies, we always want to ask ourselves, what am I afraid I can't protect? Neurobiologically, Mars is our defense system. It's our muscles and our blood. It's the adrenals and the dominant arm. When we activate Mars, we are protecting something. When your blood starts to boil, it's a clue that you have triggered a belief that something is in danger. So in our bodies, Mars is the instinct to take protective action. And if we don't know what we're trying to protect, we can get very confused and become like a wrecking ball that's no longer connected to the chain. But if we do know what we're trying to protect, if we do know why we're taking the action we're taking, we can be like a dancing Wu master, stronger than strong, faster than fast, heroic and unstoppable. Coming into a healthy relationship with this part of ourselves, this archetype, means nothing if we're just fighting with shadows and ghosts, if we're trapped in our own shadows. That's Mars dishonored. A lot has been written about warfare and how we get into it, what it's all about. After World War II, a woman named Hannah Arendt wrote about something she called the banality of evil. She wrote about people losing the ability to make a choice, to be able to use their Mars. People who could only protect themselves by denying they had any will at all. They slid into an abdication of personal responsibility and found themselves able to say, I was just following orders. And another writer, Delmore Schwartz, said about that time, the greatest terror, the greatest abomination is the loss of the will that desires and chooses. It wasn't the madmen of the Third Reich that was so terrifying, although they were terrifying. It's not what comes at us in life that's the most terrifying. It's the zombie-like loss of the ability to have a personal will. If we can't protect what we love, if we can't protect what we believe in, we lose our Mars, we lose our willpower, and we become ashamed and repressed. And very dangerous, actually. Mars is always very fiery. It's always been associated with fire. It's the red planet, after all. And fire is the element of spirit. It's heart and soul. It's the fire in our bellies that knows what's really right and true. It's also the fire that goes out when we lose touch with our right to choose and act on that choice. Mars is the part of us that's directly connected with what we know is important to us, and it's the willpower to make sure that we protect it and make it happen. In astrology, Mars is called the personal planet. It's the fourth planet from the Sun. The Earth is the third, and Mars is the fourth, and it can be seen with the naked eye. And it actually is quite red when you look at it. Humans have been observing Mars since the dawn of time. It takes almost 2 years to make a cycle around the Sun, so it spends about 7 to 8 weeks in each sign. And it's fitting that as the first planet outside the Earth's orbit, the planet that's connecting it with the outer world in a sense, Mars has always been depicted as courageous, kind of like Captain Kirk in Star Trek. Mars is the part of us that's willing to seek out new life and new civilizations and to boldly go where no man has gone before. Here's a quote from Carolyn Casey. Mars is the part of us that understands this life, this body, this whole real physical experience is not some passive intellectual thing that happens to somebody else. It's a bold, personal, active, heroic, and completely engaged spiritual adventure. So in mythology and legend and folklore, this way of the hero always brings us back to our own heart. And the root of the word courage actually is coeur, a French word, which means heart. And Mars is the part of us that loves with our whole heart this experience of being physical and being alive. And the greatest acts of courage always involve facing our own inner demons of doubt and fear. So when we talk about Mars as the leader or the warrior archetype, we're also talking about the part of us that has the courage to admit when we're wrong. The part of us that is able to brace ourselves to withstand somebody else's disagreement or somebody else's disappointment in us. It's the willpower to stand up to anything with strength and conviction because we are protecting our own inner truth. Now, when we're hurt, that Mars naturally comes up. We naturally respond with a pushback, or we say no, and we protect ourselves. That's the natural, healthy response of this archetype. But when it's not allowed to say no, when healthy anger becomes sublimated or pushed back on itself, it eventually does great harm to ourselves and with our interactions with everyone else. We drop into fear and dissembling, or that weakness of the banality of evil, just doing what other people tell us what to do. Healing post-traumatic stress is healing our Mars archetype. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of heart, to see what harm you've done to others, or to admit how you've walked away from yourself, or to remember the trauma of what really did happen. It takes a lot of awareness to feel fear and doubt come up in our bodies and to let it pass, trusting that our brave hearts are going to lead us through. So Mars is the hero's journey. Excuse me. It's the journey of learning how to get what we want without having to use power over and without denying our own will. Those inner demons can only be transformed by taking responsibility for our own truth, for standing behind it and supporting it. In a wonderful book called Shambhala, The Sacred Path of the Warrior, it says the essence of this way, this path of the warrior, is transcending cowardice and manifesting bravery. The fundamental aspect of bravery is being without deception. Usually if we say someone is brave, we mean that he's not afraid of any enemy, or he's willing to die for a cause, or he's never intimidated. But the Shambhala understanding of bravery is quite different. Here, bravery is the courage to be, to live in the world without any deception, and with tremendous kindness and caring for others. Real fearlessness is the product of tenderness. It comes from letting the world tickle your heart, your raw and beautiful heart. You are willing to open up without resistance or shyness and face the world. You're willing to share your heart with others. The awakening of human dignity, that you have the perfect right to be exactly as you are, is the beginning of spiritual warriorship. I just love that. The beginning of real warriorship and the awakening of human dignity is knowing that you have the perfect right to be exactly as you are. Mars is simple. It's the part of us that can take joy in our own accomplishments, but also other people's accomplishments. It's the part of us that's as tender and raw as a green shoot just starting out, or as fierce as a firestorm. It's clean and honest. In our physical bodies, Mars is said to rule the energy flow in the bloodstream. It vitalizes, purifies, cleanses, and stimulates all aspects and all organisms of the body. When we integrate this archetype into our psyche, we feel clean and pure and unfettered and adventurous. So Mars is like the Errol Flynn in a good-hearted, swashbuckling pirate movie, or Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, or Joan of Arc, or Luke Skywalker, or Pippi Longstockings, or Amelia Earhart. It's the part of us that knows life is an adventure, and the only thing to fear is fear itself. So that's a kind of an overview of Mars. I think you get the idea. And before we go into our meditation and actually meet our own Mars, I want to read you a poem that many of you probably already heard. It's called The Invitation by Uriah Mountain Dreamer. It says, "It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you've been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you've studied. I want to know what sustained you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself, and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. So that is a message straight from Mars. So now I'd like you to just let yourself take a deep breath. There's a lot of information, actually, all at once. But this call was recorded. You can go back and listen to it as often as you'd like.